it's a special package, positive factor for developing Georgia, believe that they can change one government with another, building a stable society with low level of crime. I'll try to somehow show democratic state and to play the role that we provide opportunities for those countries to be accelerated to economic problems in the region, and we have seen a serious challenge, and we have been facing a serious challenge last year.
Still, there are signs.
So I thought this was an extremely interesting conference. And one of the things that kind of emerges for me from this conference is that Georgia's really in a unique situation. So if you think about the last panel, which was about economics, but then the political panels, both domestic and international, that we spoke about yesterday, it's not obvious that there's any exact analogy to the situation that Georgia finds itself in. So if you look, for instance, at high growth countries, Chile, is easy. Chile's, it's a country that's had a high level of education, but it's in a very benign neighborhood. Doesn't have external threats. It's not really a hub, so it's not exactly like Georgia. Another possible analogy that was mentioned this morning is Israel. So Israel's in a really bad neighborhood. I would say as bad a neighborhood as Georgia, maybe worse. But it's also not a hub. It doesn't really have any regional opportunities. It's been successful primarily because of its education and high technology, part of which was the result of immigration to Israel, especially from Russia. Estonia, which is another country that was mentioned, also a small country. On the one hand, also has Russia as a neighbor, which is not a good thing, but has now membership in the EU and NATO, which makes it more secure. So I think if you're looking at the kind of keys to Georgian development and to Georgian security, I think a point that actually David Kramer, my colleague, made yesterday is critical, that is democracy, with very, very few exceptions, maybe Singapore. The only countries in the world that have gotten rich are democratic countries, and there's a reason for that, because to become rich, people have to feel secure in their economic resources. And if you're living in an autocratic state, you can never really feel secure. So thinking about the kinds of things that Georgia can do that are under its control, because it can't move itself to someplace else in the world, I think cementing Georgian democracy, which is it's a challenging task for everyone, so I don't think this is something that happens automatically, is very important. I think thinking about the hub opportunities for Georgia, that is something that is unique for Georgia. I think the economic policies, I don't want to pretend that I understand them deeply, but that the economic policies that the country has followed have been pretty correct, and that those are things that are under Georgia's control, and the education issue, which I think is also something that Georgia could really take advantage of. As Larry pointed out, it's true that we've had a surprisingly large number of people from Georgia in our program. I think so those things, education, consolidating democracy, staying on a democratic path, staying with a market economy, are things which are within Georgia's control. And if you're looking for the keys to success both politically and economically, those are the ones that seem to me the most critical.
I think this collaboration between CDDRL and the Economic Policy Research Center has been immensely successful. We've had a very invigorating and informative two-day conference. Certainly we, coming from outside Georgia, learned a lot about what's happening here, some of the challenges you face, some of the progress that you've made, and some of the conditions for stabilizing and consolidating democracy in Georgia. We, I think, have been very impressed substantively by how much the themes interact with one another, that in order to really make Georgia secure in every sense of the word, it's really critically important to deepen and consolidate democracy. If Georgia doesn't have a really vigorous, honest, effective democratic state, it's not going to be secure, because it's in a very, very strategically difficult, challenging, and potentially unfriendly place. And as we learned today, there are tremendous possibilities for the economy, for Georgia to be a kind of logistical hub with a very balanced economy, with human capital formation in a way in the lead as it would have to be. I would even say Georgia's blessed not to have great natural resource wealth like Azerbaijan has, because the countries that have started from relatively lower income status without natural resource wealth have tended to do better over time. And we have great hopes for the future. Georgia is strategically, you just have to look at the map, a very important country. And if you could really deepen and consolidate a democracy here, it would have implications, very important implications for the whole kind of Southern Caucasus region, probably for Central Asia more broadly in the longer run. And it would certainly then help to provide a natural limit against subversion of Georgian sovereignty. And that, I think, is a very important goal of Western democracies. We're not trying to contain Russia. We're not trying to encircle it. We're not trying to demean it in any way. We'd just like to have every country be secure and dignified in its own genuine sovereignty.